the previous section, we have looked at how exactly we need to set up our VS Code so that way we can connect to our Salesforce org. And post that, we have also looked at how do we troubleshoot these issues in terms of the connection between the VS Code and the Salesforce org. In this section, we look at how do we retrieve the changes from our Salesforce org to our VS Code, and then we look at how do we deploy the changes that we have in our local to the Salesforce org. If I have to represent that in a form of a picture, this is how it looks like. This is my VS Code, and this is my Salesforce org wherein which I have the changes. The process of pulling the changes from the Salesforce org and downloading them and seeing that in our VS Code is nothing but a process called retrieve, and the process of making a change and pushing those changes to the Salesforce org, that process is nothing but deploy. Retrieve can be related to the option that we use, which is nothing but download. If you like any wallpaper or anything in the internet, you would be using an option to download that image into your local mobile phone or your desktop. Similarly, in case if you have to upload a profile picture in any of the social networking sites, so you would upload that. So you can think of your deploy as an upload option that we have. I'm just giving this name so that way it would be easier for you to remember. So this is how the retrieve and deploy options would work. So retrieve is a technical term that is given to download the changes or the metadata of changes that we have in our Salesforce or to our local, and vice versa is called deploy. Now we'll go ahead and understand how do I initiate the retrieve operation from my VS Code so that way I get the changes that are there in my org. So before I go ahead and show you how do we do it, let's look at what is there in our org so that way we can validate the same thing in our VS Code. Currently, I'm on my Salesforce org where I see an Apex class here. So this is an Apex class that I have created. So what I wanted to, as a part of retrieval, I wanted to pull this class into my local system. What I'll do, I'll add an extra comment here and deploy the changes back to this class to see if we are able to make these changes happening. So that is the end goal of our testing here. So I want to retrieve this class, make some changes and deploy it back so that I can validate the changes, whether they're deployed successfully or not. So since I have shown you the class that I wanted to make a change on, let's go back to the VS Code and see how do we fetch that information. As soon as you authorize the Salesforce org, you would be seeing an icon, Salesforce icon that comes up on the left-hand side. Upon hovering, it says org browser. If you click on that, it would give you a folder structure where you can see, right? Lots of folders would be there. One more interesting point that you might observe is if there is no default org that has been set, you would not see this folder structure. In case if you do not see this folder structures here, what you can do, click on this refresh icon. So that way the Salesforce would get the latest from the authorized org that you have given access to the VS Code. So if you look at this, all the folder structures, what are they calling out? They're calling out different metadata types that we have. Example is Apex class is there, Apex triggers is there, Aura components are there. If I scroll down a bit, I can see assignment rules here. If I scroll down a bit more, we can see a couple more things like custom objects, custom tabs. Right, so all the metadata that we have in the org is present here. Now, I just wanted to show you how do I retrieve that Apex class that we talked about and make a change and deploy that. So in order for me to see what all Apex classes are there, I need to expand this folder. So if you see here, this is the class that I'm interested in, Apex demo class. If you remember, this is the class name that I was showing you earlier. So this is the class that I wanted to retrieve. I would repeat, this is the class that I wanted to retrieve from Salesforce org to my VS Code local project folder. All right, so I'm downloading that class to my VS Code local project folder. Now, how do I do that? If you see, there is an icon that is like a download symbol with a cloud sign around it. So we just need to click on that. So if you see, as soon as I do that, there is a retrieval action that is happening, and it is telling me that I have retrieved, using this command, I was able to retrieve these two changes from that org. What are those changes? I have retrieved Apex demo class and another metadata file which basically has the version and whether the class is active or not. So that information in the form of metadata.xml. Where do I check these changes? I was able to retrieve them. Where do I check these changes? If you go back to your folder structure, that is where under the class you will be able to see this. That is where you will be able to see the class that you have retrieved. Since I have retrieved only one, I am able to see one class here, whereas my org has multiple classes here. In case if you want to download any other class, feel free to click on that icon and you would be able to see the changes under that particular folder. Done it for the class. You can also do the same thing for your objects or any metadata for that matter. Now, if I open this class, this basically shows us the same code that I have in my org as well. If you see there is only one comment that has been added, what I'll do, I'll go ahead and add another comment here. I'll say comment 1 and I'll add comment 2 as 2 lines of code into this class that I already have. Now, where did I make this change? I've made the change on the local project folder. That means the changes that I have done on this class are in my local. Now, how do I push these changes or how do I move these changes to the org that this VS Code is connected? Simply do a right click and then say deploy source to the org. In case if you do not see this option, that means you have not properly authorized your dev org. Feel free to check that out and come back and give it a try once more. So I'll do a right click here and say deploy source to the org. If everything goes fine, I should be seeing this latest changes in the class that I was showing you earlier. So as of now, it says the deploy source to the org successfully ran. That means the deployment is completed. Let's go to the org and check it out if we have that changes or not. So currently I have not refreshed the screen. Still I see the old changes. If I refresh the screen, that is where I should be seeing the latest changes on that class, which are coming from my VS Code to the Salesforce org. If you see here, I've added 2 lines of code extra that got deployed to my source org or to the dev org that I've connected the VS Code to. So this is how you would be retrieving and deploy changes to your dev org using your VS Code. Now, if you ask me, does it initiate a deployment behind the scenes? The answer is yes. You can check the status of your deployment once you initiate it from the VS Code from the deployment status screen. If you look at the deployment, this is the latest deployment that I've done where I've made a single change on that class. So this is how you would make sure that you initiate the change. You would deploy the changes from your local to the Salesforce org using your deploy option. And whereas if you want to retrieve, use the retrieve option that is given by VS Code when you hover onto the org browser and download the or retrieve the changes that you are looking for. So that is the end of the section where we have looked at how do we retrieve the changes, metadata changes or metadata files that we have in Salesforce to our local, made a change on it and deploy the changes back to the Salesforce org. You might be wondering, can this not be done in our developer console? Why do we need to attach a VS Code to it in terms of getting the changes to our local, making the change and deploying them back? So that is where we look at one more example in the next section, which would help us understand the power of having a CLI and VS Code, which would help us get the suggestions for the syntax that we are writing in terms of increasing the efficiency of the developer.
Hey guys, if you like this video, do like, share and subscribe to SFDC Quest.